Don't touch anything. Everything you see in here is either haunted, cursed, or been used in some sort of ritualistic practice. Nothing's a toy. Not even the toys.
How many cases you guys had?
Cases?
My name is Ed Warren, here with my wife Lorraine.
Maybe 1,000. Every case is different. Every family's different. Once we start, there's no going back. Mommy! Anything can happen. And most likely anything will.
Something's changed. Something's different.
Son of the Holy Spirit. We cast you out! It won't open! By the power of our Lord Jesus Christ!
We've been waiting so patiently for you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, elderly demonologists. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. How the hell are you doing, Mike?
I am doing great. It's officially opening day, which means every Sunday we'll have football all the way through the Super Bowl from today on. So that's pretty cool. If you're a fan, I guess. Also with us is Don and Nelly. What's up, Don?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right, so this week we are covering the obvious choice, which is the latest in the Conjuring franchise called Last Rites. And the synopsis is as such. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren take on one last terrifying case involving mysterious entities they must confront. I mean, if that sounds kind of generic, it's because that's the basic setup for all the Conjuring movies, so that's good enough, I guess. So we will start with our general thoughts. Venom, what did you think of the Conjuring Last Rites?
All right. Well, what should be no surprise to anyone, I actually did enjoy this one. Now, I want to caveat that by saying, if you're looking for a jump scare filled quality haunted house movie, this is not the movie for you. This definitely doesn't have the number of jump scares, the number of over the top wacky, demonic characters that say the first two movies have. This one is definitely more like the third movie. But if you like Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as Ed and Lorraine Warren, then this is the movie for you. And I myself absolutely adore these two. Now, I'm not speaking on my opinion on the real Ed and Lorraine Warren. That's a discussion for another podcast. I am specifically talking about Vera and Patrick and their roles as Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I was the highest when we reviewed the third Conjuring movie, The Devil Made Me Do It. I was very obviously the highest of the three of us, and I have a funny feeling it's going to happen the same. I'm going to be probably the highest on this one. The movie is very obviously flawed. It is way too long, way too long. And one of the glaring things about this movie that I've read a lot of reviewers complaining about is the amount of time spent with the Warrens in this movie and not with the family that's being haunted. If you remember from the first two movies, the Perrin family and then the English family from the Enfield haunting in the second film, we got a lot of stuff in the house, a lot of setup, a lot of, great horror set pieces, things like that. We don't get a lot of that here. We actually spend minimal time with the family that's actually being haunted. In fact, this movie being 2 hours and 15 minutes, Ed and Lorraine Warren don't actually arrive at the haunted house until about 45 minutes left in the movie. So that's a solid, hour and a half into the film before they actually get to where all the hauntings and things are taking place. Now, we get a pretty cool cold open that kind of gives us a little bit of the past, a little bit of Ed and Lorraine's, like their first case that they ever covered, and then as the movie goes along, we'll see how that case ties in directly with what they're doing here in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Again, just like the third movie, this one comes off as a little bit more grounded. It doesn't have the wacky characters like the Crooked Man or Bathsheba or, Valak or Annabelle. Annabelle does make an appearance. I should shut up. Yeah, Annabelle is in this one. In one scene, she's actually more animated than we've ever seen her. Annabelle is one of those, Annabelle's a conduit for Malthus, the demon that controls Annabelle. In this one, we actually get like a cool hallucination where we actually see Annabelle kind of grow and move, which, it's CGI, yes. So, it's going to turn off a lot of people, and I understand that. The movie in general is going to turn off a lot of people. Like I said, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, capital ALOT, family drama in this movie, not only with the family that's being haunted, but mostly with Ed, Lorraine, and their daughter, Judy. I mean, like I said, the majority of the first half of this movie is basically the Warrens and their family drama. Judy is now 20 years old. It's 20 years after her birth. She's dating someone who she's very serious about. They kind of spend, and even for me, someone who absolutely loves watching Patrick and Vera in these roles, it was even a lot for me. Like I thought the whole birthday party scene, Ed's birthday party, was kind of unnecessary. I understand it was there to set up the proposal that happens at the end, but I mean, they could have skipped a good 10 to 15 minutes there. There's a scene where Judy's fiance goes to get the car that you would think would be parked somewhere near the house that they're investigating, but the way that the scene is shot, it makes it seem like he's 2 blocks away or something. Like that scene was really, really odd. And then there's a lot of other scenes in this movie that are kind of throwaway scenes. Like I feel like a solid 20 to 30 minutes of this movie could have been trimmed. Obviously, you're going to lose a lot of the emotional scenes between Ed and Lorraine and Judy. So if that's kind of why you're here, why you're still on board with the Conjuring universe, then, I would imagine you're going to really enjoy this one. But if you're here, like I said, for the great horror set pieces, the atmosphere, the tension, the wacky over-the-top ghosts that are demons, you're just not getting it here. And so a lot of people are going to think that this franchise kind of fizzled out with the perception of parts 3 and 4. I myself, like I said, I'll say it again, because I love these two actors in these roles, I will champion this franchise forever. I'm not talking about the extended Conjuring universe. That's something that'll be a discussion for another podcast, but specifically the 4 Conjuring movies. I love Vera and Patrick. I love watching them. A little tiny piece of me is actually mildly sad that we may never see them again. Obviously, if this movie makes a boatload of money, obviously we'll probably still get another one. But I've watched multiple interviews with Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, and they are adamant that they are done. The Conjuring universe obviously isn't done, but Patrick and Vera as Ed and Lorraine Warren are very done. So, but I mean, the long and the short of it is, I enjoyed this movie a lot. I think I may actually like it more than the third one. I actually like the haunting elements of this one a little bit more than the third one. We get multiple antagonists, very similar to the second movie where we got, the old man Bill Wilkins and Valak. I would probably put 4, maybe just a half a step above 3. But for whatever it's worth, I absolutely love this franchise. I love all 4 of these movies. Obviously, I love them for different reasons. And I know I'm going to be the minority on this one. Ultimately, we heard all the talk about The Devil Made Me Do It after it came out, and people talking about, oh, the Conjuring franchise is over. They've lost their way, blah, blah, blah. Those people are probably still going to think that the Conjuring franchise has lost its way and never kind of regained the foothold that it had with those first 2 movies. So just realize that if you lean towards the first 2 movies and you really like just the scary set pieces and the characters and the wacky demons and everything, then Last Rites probably isn't going to satisfy you. But like I said, if you're a fan of Vera and Patrick in these roles, I think you're going to really enjoy this movie the way I did. Unfortunately, because of my job, I wasn't able to see this a second time this weekend. I actually literally just got out of the theater about an hour and a half ago. And, the guttural reaction is I enjoyed this movie. And yes, I am a little sad that we may not see Patrick and Vera back in this role. But I mean, they had their run. They made a couple of classic movies, a couple of maybe, lesser heralded movies. But in this podcaster's opinion, I like this franchise. I am a little bit sad to see it go, but at the same time, it does feel right. I mean, this was their last case in reality. If they do another Conjuring movie, they would have to go back to some of their past cases, which means they might have to bring in those young actors that they had playing Ed and Lorraine during the cold open, which, by the way, bravo, finding a couple of actors that actually look that close to Patrick Wilson and Vera. So kudos there. But yeah, like I said, I'm fairly positive that I'm going to be in the minority on this one. I enjoyed it. It's probably just like with the first 3 Conjuring movies. It's going to be a 4K purchase for me. I absolutely love returning to these movies. I've already talked about how much I love paranormal and haunted house movies. So even one that maybe doesn't satisfy the masses like Last Rites is still going to satisfy me. So yeah, I'll leave my general thoughts at that and say I enjoyed this one a little bit more than 3, but definitely doesn't have the kind of the high points of the first 2 movies. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, let's go over to Dawn for Conjuring Last Rites thoughts.
Sorry, taking a little drink of water. Yeah, it was fun. I did enjoy parts of it, but I do think that this is the weakest of the 4. I still look at 1 as perhaps the modern mainstream genre classic. It's still, I think, like the best modern mainstream genre film ever made. 2 is enjoyable. I think it's a bit overlong. I think it's the exact same length as this one, actually. I didn't have enough time to compare the whole series, but I think 2 and 4 are actually the same length. So yeah, it's not, a little spoiler for my takes. That is an issue that I think comes up, but I still think there's enough to enjoy there. There's some still fun set pieces, and it does kind of start to turn the series a little bit more into, a Warren love fest, which continues in 3. I like 3 a little bit more than 2, just because I think 3's got a little bit of a better story to it. I think there's a better overall setup involved, and I think there's still some great set pieces in 3. But overall, I do enjoy that one quite a bit. This one kind of falls just under that one, and it kind of ends the series. It's still strong enough, but it is, I think, the weakest of the 4. The family drama is, I think, the main selling point. I think you could have done what it was intending to do here and gotten to the point at a quicker time, rather than spending what, an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes not involved in the actual haunting. Um, I get, what they're going for. I get that you're trying to, set up the family, set up their relationships, set up, the fact that, their kids have gotten older. They're, ready to move on. They're ready to, put an end to everything. And then, they've got this one last case they have to deal with. It's okay in what it's trying to do, but I think you could have done that and gotten, to the actual hauntings a little quicker. Um, the other thing for me is that I don't really find the hauntings as impactful as some of the stuff that's come earlier in the franchise. One, like I said, is still like I think the standard bearer for mainstream jump scare factory, genre efforts. And even though I think two is just a slight step down, I still think two has some fantastic set pieces. And this one just it doesn't have that, throat grabbing, jump you out of your skin kind of a set piece that the other, even three had a decent scene with I think it was the first attack at the ice cream shop. I think that was wherever the kid is when he first gets possessed and he goes crazy and starts murdering people. I think that was a great set piece. It's just been too long since I've seen it, so I don't remember offhand. But the first set piece where the possessed guy goes crazy and sets up everything that the trial centers around, I still think that was a fantastic setup. Fantastic setup. This one, it just doesn't have that, that major tension grabbing set piece, which kind of knocks it down a little for me. Um, but yeah, that's just my main issue is that even though those are fun and it's great to see them working together and seeing their interactions, their relationship, their chemistry with each other, it just doesn't match up to the set pieces that have come before, and it doesn't really reach that level. So yeah, it's enjoyable for what it is. Could you have shaved off 10, 15 minutes to this and gotten to the point quicker? Absolutely. Could you have maybe shoved some of that production time into making making one of the setups a little bit more impactful and engrossing? Yeah, sure, I wouldn't have minded that. But for what it is, I think it's enjoyable. I think this is probably not a genuine theatrical recommend. I think you can do fine waiting for streaming. If you're a hardcore, unapologetic fan of the franchise, I think that kind of changes things. You can, give it a shot in theaters, but I think most of us, I'd rather wait for streaming because, Halloween's right around the corner, and this is always, a perfect film that you can catch on, your 2025 makeup day or, whatever, genre challenge that you want to catch up on. Franchise sequel you missed or ghost movie, haunted house movie, whatever, whatever kind of a challenge that you think this one can fit into for your 31 days. I think this is a decent enough effort that's not going to be too taxing. So trying to think, but yeah, I think most of the stuff Venom caught. So yes, back to you, Mike.
Okay. Um, I don't really think any of the Conjuring movies are that good, to be honest. I think the first one is, I guess I would put it like Dawn would. Like it's a good modern kind of take on all like the tropes we've seen before. Like if and James Wan, I believe James Wan actually directed that one, correct? Where like the other
Yes.
ones he might have just been a producer. I think James Wan, he has like a good feel for these types of movies of like what they should look like, what they should sound like, what the aesthetic should be, and all that went into making the original Conjuring like pretty good. I mean, when I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater, but I remember coming away from it being like, well, it was kind of derivative, but it was still a good presentation. It was good and fun. Two, a little bit less so, but still kind of like along those lines. Three, I didn't care for, and this one I don't care for. I thought the 2 hours running time, I felt like I was bored like at least half the movie. I had no interest in the subplot of the Warren's kid and her fiance. I think it added nothing. I thought it was unnecessary and it didn't need to be there, and it just bloated a running time that didn't really have a whole lot going on. I don't like the fact that, well, assuming this isn't the last one, because from what I read, it did make a good chunk of money. So who knows if it'll really be the last one? But assuming we're gonna get more, I'll just use that hypothetical. I don't really like the fact that we're starting like go away from the families that are experienced the haunt and making these movies about the Warrens. I don't have any issue with the with Patrick Wilson and Vera. Like their depictions of the Warrens are fine. I mean, they play them well. I think they play them endearing and all that. I just don't care about the Warrens that much. If a family's going through these hauntings, and especially this family had like what, 8 people in it, and it just seemed like they were kind of like secondary characters in this. And I also believe, I want to say that this haunt that they were covering in this movie was the same one from that made for TV movie from the early 90s called The Haunted, which I like that movie better. And that movie pretty much went through the almost the whole movie, and the Warrens show up at the end. Now, obviously, I know with these Conjuring movies, they're not going to have the Warrens just show up in like the third act. That I'm not hoping for that. I never think that would be realistic, but I just do think they're just spending too much time. But maybe that's what the fans of the, like, if that's what the Conjuring fans want, then I see why it's happening. I might be in the minority on that, that I just don't really care about the Warrens all that much. Um, I did see this in like the, I don't know why, but I just decided, hey, instead of using my, well, I used my free pass, but I did the upgrade for the RPX, which is like Regal's Dolby Atmos, and the sound design was very good. Like that was probably one of my favorite aspects of the movie, because I was like, oh, it's going to be a haunt movie. There's probably going to be, lots of loud music cues in these types of horror movies, and it did deliver in that. So that was that was probably my favorite aspect of it, was the sound design. It was well done, but I don't know. Other than that, it felt generic. It felt very paint by numbers. It felt every beat of every drum that you knew that was coming. Like everything you've ever seen in a haunt movie, it just happened again in this, nothing different, nothing new. It was pretty predictable. No one, I mean, there was not many characters in peril at all in this movie. And again, I don't care. I mean, I don't mind long running times if you give me something entertaining, but I don't care about their kids or their daughter getting married or engaged. It just didn't interest me. I was bored. And yeah, that's about it. I for one will be happy if there's no more Conjuring. Well, I don't want to say I'll be happy. That's too strong. I'm indifferent. If they make more, I'll go see them, because that's what I that's what we do. We go see them, but like I won't be like bothered if we don't get any more. So, what else can I say? Um Yeah, that's about it. I did like, I like the design, like the time capsule kind of aspect. I thought the design was well done. Um, the family, I mean, the family was cool, but again, we didn't get enough of the family, in my opinion. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. So back to you, Venom.
This franchise is definitely the story of two directions. With the first two movies, it's definitely more about the haunts and the families that are being haunted. So you get a lot more set pieces, you get a lot more jump scares, you get a lot more tense scenes and more atmospheric scenes. Whereas the second half of the franchise, parts 3 and 4, are definitely, as I mentioned earlier, more for people who love Ed and Lorraine Warren in these movies. Now, obviously, Mike's opinion is 100% valid. If you don't give a rat's ass about the Warrens and you don't care about Patrick and Vera, then, especially this entry is just going to bore you to tears. And I understand that. I'm not going to necessarily argue that. But like I said, I'm coming from the mentality of actually loving these characters, or should I say the actors in these roles. Again, my opinion on Ed and Lorraine in real life is a story for another show, but as far as these two in these roles, I think they've had endless chemistry. I think their chemistry is absolutely spectacular, and to watch their interviews too. I mean, they are such great friends, and they've got this camaraderie that you don't see among co-stars very often. So I just, like I said, my heart kind of swells for these two. I am a fan, and if you're not a fan, then yeah, Last Rites is just not going to be the movie for you. Whatever you felt about The Devil Made Me Do It is probably going to be your same opinion on this movie, maybe even slightly lower, like Don's opinion on this one compared to part 3. So like I said, it is a very acquired taste. Like, if you're looking for haunts and scares, this is not the movie for you. I can't stress that enough. But if you're looking for great performances from our two stars, and yes, maybe a story that of Judy and her engagement that maybe didn't need to be there, but I also understand why it's there. I was that guy for a little while. I was that fiance, the kind of nervous guy who, didn't think that his girlfriend's parents liked him very much and would try to go out of his way to try to, make him see, I'm just a normal guy. I'm not trying to steal your daughter, blah, blah, blah. So I understand, even though I'm not a parent, I kind of understand, the whole chemistry between Patrick Wilson and the fiance. And, I should probably stop saying the fiance and actually use his damn name. Where are we here? What was his name? Tony was his name. That's right. Played by Ben Hardy. So yeah, this character didn't really add a lot to the movie in and of himself. Obviously, when it comes to more his place in this family, there is somewhat of an interesting story to be seen there. But again, it's an acquired taste. Like I said, if you're looking for those big jump scares and crazy looking demons, then you're not going to get it in this one. And for some people, that's going to be fine. For others, even walking out of the theater today, I heard younger audiences, younger members of the audience saying, "Wow, that was boring. That was long and dull." And it's like, well, yeah, to an extent, it was long and dull, but it's not long and dull if you actually care about these characters, which I myself do. So again, I can't really recommend this. Like Don was saying, I can't really say that this is an absolute theatrical watch. I actually saw this in IMAX today at AMC. It looks beautiful. Mike talking about the sound design is correct. The sound design was still great, even in the IMAX theater. But this is not going to go down as a classic entry in the franchise. The first two are going to be the ones that people really remember. They're going to remember the villains. Like, there's probably Conjuring fans that couldn't name the villain from part 3. It's like that. I don't want to call it forgettable. It's kind of a harsh indictment. But like I said, if you're not the biggest fan of Ed and Lorraine, then it is a forgettable movie, much like this one is too. So again, it's just what side of the fence do you lie on? Did you watch the Conjuring movies for the scares and the spirits and everything else, or did you watch it for the camaraderie of these two actors in these roles? And based on how you answer that question will likely tell you if you'll enjoy Last Rites or not. So yeah, I'm not sure what else I can really get into. One thing I will say on the negative about this movie, because I haven't really said many negative things about the movie, I thought the ending was a little unsatisfying. And I'm not talking about the ending of the movie. I'm talking about the ending of the haunt, like the final confrontation, if you will. I just thought it was very unsatisfying. The actual set piece, like what's happening on screen, I thought was pretty cool. But there's just the way it ended very simply with just, kind of a prayer, if you will, and it just stopped. And it's like, really? It's that easy to defeat a demon? And then there's something about the demon itself that we don't learn in this movie that I'll keep under my hat for now, because that's a little tiny bit of a spoiler. Not really. But still, it left me slightly unsatisfied. Now, the epitaph of the film afterwards, that's going to be some divisive shit, because the final scene of the movie is the wedding scene where Judy, gets married. And at the wedding, there is basically everyone that's ever starred in a Conjuring movie. You get the whole Perrin family there from the first movie. You get the whole English family from the Enfield haunting in the second movie. You get the kid from Devil Made Me Do It. And then, of course, the family from this movie. They all showed up for Judy's wedding. And that can come off as very pandering to a lot of people. I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. I don't mind pandering if it's done right. A little pandering doesn't bother me, because ultimately I've been here this long. I've been with the franchise since the beginning, the way most of us have, and I still have a deep love for this franchise. So to actually see all those people at the wedding, we've seen franchises do it before, where they'll bring back legacy characters. Obviously, we've had long discussions about legacy characters and in reviewing like the newer Scream movies, and I know what you did last summer and things like that. But like I said, sometimes a little light pandering actually kind of makes me happy, and I'm okay with it. Hell, Ready Player One is probably the most pandering movie ever made, and I fucking love it. Ready Player One is probably it's a top 5 sci-fi movie to me of all time, and I know that's probably blasphemous to hardcore sci-fi fans, but I don't care. I absolutely adore that film. But again, that's a discussion for another podcast. So I guess what I can say is, before we get into spoiler talk, I'll turn it back over to my co-host to see if they have anything else they want to add. It doesn't sound like they will, but I'll ask anyway, just to be polite. Gentlemen?
I will. So I was going to ask, because you mentioned how like the ending was kind of unsatisfying, just the way how they kind of repel the demon or whatever. I can't, because I've only seen all of the Conjuring movies once, I don't have a lot of memory, but like, is there something specific that the Warrens are supposed to be able to do that like other priests can't do? Because like I don't know, like,
yeah, that's why this ending wasn't satisfying.
Yeah,
because to
'cause,
answer
like-
your question, no, there is nothing that they can do that any random priest could have done.
yeah, because like I understand if like the storyline is like, well, the church isn't approving this, so they have to come in instead of the church. But like when the church is actually believing them and are believing the family and like, yes, we'll come and help, and they do their thing and it fails, and then the Warrens come in, it's like, but they're just doing the exact same thing, it seems like. So why not work? But that aside, the only thing I was going to add was, despite my pretty negative opinion of this movie, I'm going to kind of like subvert expectations and say you should probably still see it in the theater if you're somewhat of a fan or just curious, because the main things I did like about it are things you can't replicate at home watching it in your living room, such as like the sound. Like, to me, movies like this, one thing they usually do well always is just sound design, sound cues, and like, even coming from someone that has a decent home theater, it doesn't, it can't compare to a movie theater surround sound. So like, if for no other purpose than, hey, I just want to go and hear loud noises come out, like jump out and make me scared or whatever, try to jump scare me. If for no other purpose, yeah, take a date, take a friend, and just go see it for that reason, I guess. Because the problem is, to me, I mean, if I'm looking at it objectively, if you remove that element from it, then you're really removing like the potentially the best part of the movie. So like, I wouldn't want to say see it at home instead, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And to speak to that point too, with me seeing it in IMAX today, I can kind of speak about a couple of the scenes. I thought the Annabelle scene was awesome. Yes, it's heavily CGI, but in IMAX, it looked great. I thought the Shining Sink scene was really cool. Kind of came out of nowhere, but I did actually like it, especially the music that was playing while it was happening. It actually had Shining vibes to it. Like, I would not be surprised if Michael Chaves, the director of this movie, actually purposely put a Shining homage in here, because when you see a lot of blood in one place, I mean, if you don't think about The Shining, what else are you thinking about as a horror fan? So, as a fan of The Shining, obviously, I did appreciate that little homage, and it was something that they hadn't done in the franchise before, so I'll take it. Not a whole lot in this movie was done that they've never done before in the franchise. So, like Mike said, it's pretty derivative. It's been there, done that. But obviously, if you enjoy what's been done in the past, you'll probably enjoy this one as well. So let's go ahead and get into our walkthrough. It's going to be a fairly quick one, despite being a 2 hour and 15-minute movie. I'm going to try to be as quick as possible. Our movie opens up with a cold open. It is 1964. We see a very young Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by some different actors, not Patrick. Because at first I thought it was Patrick Wilson and Vera, like de-aged, like digitally de-aged, but no. Those are actually different actors that they got that actually look exactly like young Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. So anyway, we see them. Vera is very pregnant. She's about to pop any day now. They're at an investigation at a couple's house. She starts to hear voices while she's there. It turns out that there's some voice beckoning her from a mysterious mirror in the house. The mirror is basically like a 6-foot tall mirror with a wooden frame, and the top of the frame has 3 like cherub heads on it, like baby heads, baby angels, if you will, with the middle one being slightly bigger than the 2 outside ones. And Vera approaches it. As she's hearing this voice beckoning to her, she goes to touch it, but then when she touches it, nothing really unusual happens until she pulls her hand away, and then the mirror cracks, and it cracks basically all the way across the middle, very spiderweb-like. It kind of crackles out. And she thinks that she sees something, and then she basically starts to scream, and she's worried about the baby. Something is going on with the baby. They are rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, Vera, the doctors are trying to save the child. As it turns out, the umbilical cord is wrapped around the child's throat. It's basically strangling the baby. They're trying to get the baby out of the mother before she dies completely. Unfortunately, when they finally get the baby out of Vera, the baby is gone. They try to give her CPR. Nothing happens. What happens next might be a little cringy to some people, a little over the top. But yeah, basically Vera says, "I want my baby." The doctor says, "I'm sorry," and hands her their dead baby girl. And basically Vera just holds the baby and just says, "Please, God, please," over and over and over again. And eventually the baby starts coughing and starts crying, and it's a miracle. The baby was stillborn, was dead for a solid minute, according to Patrick Wilson, or according to Ed Warren, excuse me. And then suddenly the baby just came to life. So, it's kind of like their miracle baby. So it kind of stresses the point of how protective Vera and Ed are for Judy. They eventually named their daughter Judy, of course. I mean, we've met Judy in previous movies as a teenager, as a little girl first, and then as a teenager. So now we get a time jump. We get a montage of Ed and Lorraine growing up and growing old with Judy. Suddenly it's now 1984, so it's 20 years later. And of course, if you remember from the events of The Devil Made Me Do It, Ed Warren suffered a major heart attack during that investigation, and basically they had retired. So at the beginning of this movie, once we get to 1984, Ed and Lorraine are no longer taking cases. They are completely retired. They still, do like seminars on demonology. They still write books, blah, 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 but they're just not taking on any more investigations. And then this is where it just gets into like the whole family aspect of the Warrens, where we meet Judy as a 20-year-old. We meet her boyfriend, Tony. He seems very nervous about going to the house. They're going for Ed's birthday. I forget what actual, I don't remember seeing a number on any of the banners or anything, but it's basically Ed's birthday. And Tony, the boyfriend, is very nervous. As it turns out, after getting through an extended ping pong scene, which is definitely a scene that could have been taken out of this. After Ed beats Tony at a match of ping pong, it looks like he's about to have another heart attack. Like he puts both of his hands down and he starts breathing very hard. But then Lorraine comes over, asks him if everything is okay, and it is. At that moment, Tony decides to ask Ed and Lorraine for their blessing, as he has bought an engagement ring, and he wants to ask Judy to marry him. Lorraine is obviously very happy, ecstatic, if you will. Ed is a little standoffish. He's worried that, oh, you've only been dating for 6 months, which, folks, Mrs. Venom and I dated for 3 months, 90 days before we got married. And this coming March, we'll be celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary. So don't ever let anyone tell you, oh, you haven't dated long enough to want to marry that person. That's absolute BS. Yes, I'm sure there are cases where people get married too quickly and then they regret it within a few months of getting married. But I just want to let you know that there are examples of people who get married way too early and it actually does work out. So there you go. Anyway, point being, Ed is a little standoffish. He basically doesn't really want to give his blessing right away. And Tony can read the room. He can kind of tell that Ed isn't really that excited about it. So he's like, well, I'll just put the ring away and maybe I'll ask her in like a month or two, which obviously doesn't satisfy Ed. He's like, a month or two? What are you talking about? You've only been with her for 6 months. What ends up happening is at that point, Judy walks into the room. Tony tries to quickly put the engagement ring away before she sees it. But like the idiot that he is, he ends up dropping the ring. It falls to the floor. He picks it up. She sees it, instantly gets excited because she's like, is that for me? And before Tony even gets a chance to ask her, will you marry me? She's screaming, yes, yes, yes. Obviously, Ed isn't happy because he didn't want this to happen, but because of Judy walking in at the wrong time, it ended up happening. So there you go. Now, at the same time, we have a family in Pittston, Pennsylvania, who just got a very familiar mirror. Yes, my friends, the mirror from the cold open is given to one of the teenage girls in this family for her confirmation. Like Mike said, this is a large family. There's 8 people living here, a set of parents, a set of grandparents, and then 4 kids, all of them girls. Oh, that poor family. Anyway, the grandfather and grandmother find the mirror at like a yard sale or something, and they end up picking it up and giving it to the teenage daughter, who just got confirmed because her older sister's always taking up the bathroom and she doesn't have enough time to do her hair and makeup and everything. So the grandparents thought, let's get her a full-length mirror that she can keep in her bedroom. Obviously, they didn't think they were getting a possessed mirror, because fairly instantly, as soon as the mirror is there, just weird things start happening. The girl who actually received the mirror, I believe her name was Dawn, she ends up seeing like reflections in the mirror that shouldn't be there. She ends up seeing a reflection of herself smiling back at her when she's not smiling, things like that. Eventually, the sisters, Dawn and her older sister, decide to get rid of the mirror. They figure they'll wait until the parents and grandparents are asleep for the night. And then it just happens to be trash night that day. So they carry the mirror downstairs, leave it in the dumpster, or leave it with the trash on the side of the road. And then we see the garbage men come and pick it up the next day. They put it in the garbage truck. And as the compactor comes down to destroy the mirror, we see the older sister, not the one who actually received the mirror as a gift, but the older sister, start coughing at the dinner table, literally simultaneously, the breakfast table, I should say. As the mirror is getting crushed by the compactor in the garbage truck, she starts coughing and then she throws up. And it looks like just the cereal that she was eating, but then suddenly the vomit turns into blood and she's projectile vomiting blood all over the kitchen. Finally, she stops vomiting up blood and looks into the sink where the last little bit of her blood vomit ended up, and she sees glass. and the shards are reflective. It's fucking pieces of the mirror. Somehow pieces of the mirror ended up inside the sister. She's rushed to the hospital. They're fine. The parents try to get help. They try to, they don't know what to do though. Like they can't leave because they're a family of 8. So they can't afford to stay in a motel. They can't afford to just try to sell the house and leave. So they're kind of stuck there. They do turn to the church, but the church doesn't really send any representatives or help in any way. So eventually they decide to turn to the media, which, as it turns out, is a giant mistake. As we learned from the Enfield haunting in the second Conjuring movie, going to the media is just going to create a circus in front of your house, and that's exactly what happens. We've got media trucks in front of their house. The neighbors hate them, because of this. Like the neighbors think that they actually want this kind of attention when all they really wanted was help. Eventually, Father Gordon, who is a priest that has worked with Ed and Lorraine in the past, ends up going to visit this family. While he's at the house, he's spreading holy water throughout the house. Nothing eventful really happens until he gets down to the basement of the house. Once he's in the basement, he starts spreading the holy water, and the holy water starts evaporating the instant it touches anything in the basement, the floor, any of the pillars, any countertops, anything. It literally just starts to evaporate. And then at one point, the priest turns around and sees that the basement is filled with smoke from all this evaporating, or not smoke, but mist. From all the evaporating holy water. He realizes this is not a place that I should be in. He leaves instantly, tells the family, I'm going to go to the church. I'm going to tell them what they saw, and they're going to believe me because, he's a long-standing priest, with good standing, within the church. So he's very sure that he's going to be able to take care of things. Unfortunately, when he visits the archbishop, the man who's in charge of the church in this area, we get a really weird set piece where he walks in. The archbishop's secretary is there in the front room. She asks him who he is. He tells her. She calls the archbishop, lets him know that this is an emergency and that this Father Gordon needs to speak to him. And then something just weird happens. He turns his head to look at a janitor who's using like one of those floor buffers, one of those electric floor buffers. And the janitor's moving farther and farther away from where it's plugged in so that eventually it tightens up. And, I guess there's probably some symbolism there to be had. I didn't quite pick it up on the first watch, but then what ends up happening is suddenly the room goes dark. Both the door to the archbishop's office and then the door on the opposite side of the room that leads into the secretary's room, they both shut simultaneously. The room goes dark. And then we kind of see that the priest suddenly is almost like he's being controlled by something. Suddenly, we see the priest walk over to the plug where the floor buffer is plugged in, unplugs the cord, wraps it around his neck, and then jumps down the middle of a circular stairwell, obviously, breaking his neck and dying instantly. So, yeah, our priest, who is trying to help this family, is quickly dispatched by this demon that's that's haunting this family. Like I said, there's more set pieces with Judy because obviously Judy has the same abilities that that Lorraine has. I've been calling her Vera the whole movie. The daughter has the same abilities that the mother has. Lorraine is trying to give her little tips on how to shut out the spirits and the demons so that she can't see them. So she has this little nursery rhyme that she kind of says well into adulthood to basically stop seeing like a spirit or something that's standing in front of her, blah, blah, blah. And like I said, she tries to use it periodically later in the film, but obviously it doesn't really work. It's really more something to make a child feel better. But yeah, eventually what ends up happening is an hour and 45 minutes into the movie, after the priest kills himself and after the father's funeral, the daughter Judy suddenly, like, she explains it as something was calling me, something was telling me to come to this house. Obviously, Judy wanted to find out where the priest killed himself, because don't forget, the priest was not from Pennsylvania. He's from Connecticut, where the Warrens live. So he didn't actually know this family in Pennsylvania before going to visit them. So apparently he didn't tell anybody that he was going to go do this, because his actual bishop had no idea why he was in Pennsylvania. So Judy wants to find out why he was in Pennsylvania. Through her investigation, she finds out that there is a family that's being haunted. They're all over the news in Pennsylvania. They're all over the news, and she decides to just go because she claims that something was calling her. Don't forget, Ed and Lorraine are retired at this point. They don't want to take any more cases. We even get a scene, another throwaway scene that we probably didn't need in the movie, where Ed visits his doctor, and the doctor basically tells him, you cannot have another heart attack. Do you understand? You will not survive another heart attack, which is why Ed and Lorraine have retired from demonology. They're just, like I said, they'll still work for educational purposes, but no more cases or investigations or anything. So with Judy now missing, somehow Lorraine is able to figure out that where Judy is, and they end up driving there. So Ed, Lorraine, and Tony, the now fiance of Judy, all travel to Pennsylvania to go to this house. When they get there, it's an absolute media circus. There's, TV trucks outside, crowds of at least like 60 to 80 people just kind of crowding the streets in front of the house. There's police barricades, there's cops there, blah, 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 blah. Ed and Lorraine go into the house and they find Judy there. Judy's at the house. They obviously want Judy to leave so that they can all go home right away. But Judy, of course, gives them, that speech that Lorraine gave her earlier on in her life about how you can't run from danger. You can't run from trouble. You have to face it. And if you can help innocent people, you absolutely should. So, of course, Ed and Lorraine, much to their chagrin, decide, okay, we'll stay. And like I said, I mean, there's only about 40 minutes left in the movie at this point. So the actual haunting in this house goes by pretty quickly. After Lorraine does kind of a sweep of the house, she goes up to the attic and finds the mirror. Yes, the mirror that was supposedly crushed by the garbage truck compactor earlier in the film is back in its original state. Not in its original state, but it still has the crack in it from when Lorraine saw it back in 1964. Then we get the scene where Lorraine explains everything to the family, that there is something living in that mirror and that it can't be destroyed. So, of course, the Warrens volunteer to take it and keep it in their Museum of Oddities in Connecticut. While trying to take the mirror out of the house, that's when the shit hits the fan. Basically, we get, and I forgot to explain about the spirits themselves. Lorraine figures out that there are 3 spirits attached to this family. Now, they're not attached to the house itself. They're attached to the property that the house is on. Apparently what happened is like 100 years ago or whatever, back in the, kind of covered wagons time, there was a couple that lived on this land. The wife ended up cheating on the husband, and the husband went crazy and killed the wife and the other guy, the other fella, with an axe. And then, of course, he takes his own life. So these are the 3 spirits that we actually see in the movie. Actually, we don't even see the cheater guy. Like, we don't see the adulterer. We just see the husband, because he's like the big juggernaut looking guy. He's like 6'6". He's got just a nasty demonic grin on him. And then we see his wife, the old lady that's kind of, she's the one that we see first, or she's the first entity that we see. And then we see, like I said, we see the big guy. But then Lorraine explains that they're not the ones that are actually haunting this family. They are being controlled by a demon, some demonic entity. Now, this is obviously very similar to part two, to the Conjuring part two with the Enfield haunting. If you guys remember Bill Wilkins, the old guy who died in that house, they thought he was the one who was kind of haunting this family. But of course, it turned out it was Valak, the nun, controlling Bill Wilkins' spirit and making him do the things to this family that he was doing. So Lorraine then explains that that's exactly what's happening here, that these three spirits aren't actually the ones controlling the situation. They're being forced to do what they're doing. But guess what, my friends? We never fucking find out who the demon is. We literally never fucking find out who is controlling these three spirits. We never get to see them. We never get to, I mean, I guess you could say the Annabelle scene where, basically Judy walks into a room. Annabelle is sitting in a chair where she obviously shouldn't be. She should be in a locked cage back in Connecticut. But then she suddenly just grows to literally 12 feet tall. She ends up crashing through the door of the room and her face is right up to the camera, which is why I say the IMAX experience was pretty cool for that scene specifically. I also mentioned the Shining sink. Basically, at one point in the movie, Lorraine is doing the dishes. The garbage disposal suddenly stops working. And as horror fans, I think we all kind of figure out what's about to happen. But no, the Conjuring universe subverts our expectations. Her hand does not get ground up in the garbage disposal. What ends up happening is she pulls out a locket. One of those picture lockets where you can put a picture inside of it. And it's a locket that she had given to Judy when Judy was a child. So inside of the locket is a picture of Judy as a very young girl. And then suddenly the water in the sink turns to blood and suddenly it just starts gushing out. I mean, like I said, it's the elevators from The Shining, but it's a kitchen sink instead. There's just barrels of blood coming out of the sink. And that gives Lorraine the premonition that, oh shit, Judy's actually in danger. This demon's not after us. It's after Judy for some reason. But again, like I said, we never find out who the fucking demon is. We never find out why they want Judy. It's just kind of left dangling. So yeah, definitely one of the weaker parts of the movie for me. Okay, so back to our final confrontation. The family and Ed are trying to get the mirror out of the house. As they're carrying it out, stuff starts happening in the house and Judy gets possessed. Judy ends up getting possessed and she basically starts attacking people in the house. She doesn't actually kill anyone necessarily because she's on a mission. She's trying to get up to the attic. So if she runs into anybody, she'll smack them to get them out of her way, but she won't kill them. And she's got the glossed over eyes, so it's very obvious that she's possessed, blah, blah, blah. And then and then I forgot to mention that at one point when they were trying to get the mirror out of the attic, it fell and landed on the father's leg, the father of the family, the patriarch of that family. It landed on his ankle and sprained his ankle. So for the rest of the movie, he's got a limp. And then there was the scene, like I said, with Tony, the fiance, going to get the car. Basically, Ed tells him we need to get the mirror out of here and get it over to our museum. So he sends Tony to go get his El Camino SS, which is actually a pretty nice fucking car. And it literally, like Tony is it makes the movie makes it seem like he's parked 2 fucking blocks away, because he gets in the car, he goes forward for a little bit and then does a fishtail turn, spins in the middle of the street and then starts going down the street again. And it feels like he's going for a full minute at high speeds. I mean, that car that he's driving goes pretty fast. Eventually we see a lightning strike hit the middle of the road, and then the female entity shows up in the road smiling at Tony. Tony, of course, like the idiot that he is, swerves out of the way and ends up hitting a telephone pole, which pretty much incapacitates his car, at least for the time being. Back inside the house, possessed Judy is just, trying to make her way back up to the attic. Eventually she gets up there, and then and this is after Lorraine gets pushed down a set of stairs, landing on a concrete basement floor, but she gets up like nothing happened. I'm thinking this is like a middle-aged woman that just got pushed down a long flight of stairs that lands on concrete floor, and she just got up like nothing. So movie magic, I guess. The final confrontation is the mirror basically starts to float in midair, and then it starts to spin violently. At that point, Ed grabs his Bible, starts reciting some Latin passages, starts reciting the Lord's Prayer, hoping to stop the mirror. But the mirror does end up it does eventually stop spinning, but it's still floating a few feet up in the air. And then finally it comes crashing down, blocking the path to the stairs. So basically Ed, Lorraine, Judy, and Tony are all trapped in the upstairs of this house because the mirror is blocking their path. Suddenly the mirror starts sliding forward towards them. And when it starts sliding towards them, it catches Tony's leg, and Tony's leg is just getting mangled as this thing is basically like some invisible force is pushing it towards the Warrens. It's damaging the banister of the stairway. It's damaging the wall. It's basically destroying the house as it's trying to get closer and closer to the family. Judy and Lorraine have a moment where, you know, Judy admits that, oh, I wasn't ready for this, even though throughout the movie, you know how teenagers are. I mean, she's 20, but, you know, to me, to my old ass, 20 is still a teenager. And she's basically, you know, wanting to help her mother, wanting to go on these investigations, but Lorraine knows that Judy is just not ready. She's not mentally prepared to do this. Of course, Judy starts breaking down after she's been possessed and then comes back from being possessed. She's very weak and she wants to help her mother, but she doesn't want to face the spirits. And what we see is as the mirror is being kind of pushed towards the family, we actually see the three spirits in the mirror. The spirits that are being forced to do the bidding of the demon. And we actually see them start talking to the Warrens. Like one of them actually says to Ed, do you want to watch this boy die? You know, and Ed obviously is not engaging with it. He's continuing with his prayer, blah, blah, blah. Eventually they finish a prayer that ends with you are not here. And as soon as they say you are not here, that's it. It's over. The spirits are gone. The mirror stops moving. The house is clean. And literally that's it. Like I was very unsatisfied with how they ended the confrontation here. It wasn't like that confrontation with Bathsheba at the end of part 1, or even that epic confrontation with Valak at the end of part 2. This one was actually, it kind of fizzled out. Like they said their prayer and that was it. It ended. And then, you know, we get some text on the screen letting us know that the family ended up not leaving the house. They ended up staying at the house for many years after that with no more issues. So obviously whatever the Warrens did work. And then after that text, we get the wedding scene. And yes, this is where we see Judy and Tony getting married. And like I mentioned earlier, this scene basically brings back every living legacy character from this franchise, not the extended franchise, but just the Conjuring movies specifically. So like I said earlier, we get the Perron family from the first movie. We get the English family from the Enfield haunting. We get the kid from The Devil Made Me Do It. And then, of course, the family who was helped in this movie. They're all at Judy's wedding, showing their support, blah, blah, blah. Judy ends up, you know, they end up kissing and having their moment. At the reception, Lorraine tells Ed about a dream that she had. And it was basically like the first happy dream she's ever had, where she dreamt about the future, where Judy ends up having kids. And, you know, Lorraine and Ed end up, you know, being grandparents who spoil their kids, and they end up living a long life. And that's pretty much how our movie ends. We get one more little piece of text at the end letting us know that Ed and Lorraine Warren were married for 62 years. That is goddamn impressive, my friends. for a man who's about to celebrate his 30th anniversary, 62 is almost unheard of. Like, I don't even think I'll live long enough to be married 62 years. So Ed and Lorraine were married for 62 years. At the age of 74, Ed had a major stroke that left him physically incapacitated. So Lorraine basically was his nursemaid for the final few years of his life. And then they let us know, of course, that Lorraine Warren died peacefully in her sleep when she was 92 years old, which was actually fairly recently. Lorraine Warren did die, I think, less than 10 years ago at this point now. So, yeah. And that's the end of our movie, folks. And that's the end of our franchise, too. Obviously, Mike has a valid point that if this thing does well, and just to give you an idea, this movie did 83 million domestically and 104 million international for a total box office weekend of $187 million. And that's as of this afternoon. The updated numbers will come out tomorrow morning because obviously there's still screenings of the movie that still haven't, aired, haven't played yet. So they kind of guesstimate how many tickets are going to sell for those screenings. But if they end up selling more, this $187 million number could easily swell to 200 million. And for a horror movie to do 200 million on its opening weekend, whether you love the movie or not, that's fucking impressive. The Conjuring now has the highest opening weekend gross for a horror movie this year. For 2025, they beat out Sinners, with their 187 million. I doubt they're going to make the total money that Sinners made, since Sinners is, pretty up there. But obviously, it is now the number one horror film, at least for opening weekend for 2025. So, are we going to get a fifth chapter? It's quite possible. I really do hope that Vera and Patrick are done with the franchise. Like I said, bring back those actors that you used in the cold open as young Ed and Lorraine, and let them be the stars of like the next chapter, if there is another chapter. Obviously, much to Mike's chagrin, if there's another chapter. So, but for me, this is a franchise that I think has done what it needed to do. I don't need to see any more movies, not for the same reason that Mike doesn't want to see any more movies. I actually enjoy these movies and would be okay with seeing more. But I think the franchise did what it was supposed to do. It elevated Ed and Lorraine. Like I said, despite what you might think of the real Ed and Lorraine Warren, we get our culmination of this story. We don't have to watch either of them die, which is what I was worried about. I was worried that they were actually going to do like the end of Ed's life with this one, but I'm glad they did not. And that's pretty much it, folks. That is The Conjuring Last Rites. Did you see it? What did you think? Let me know. Obviously, I'm fairly high on it because of my love of both this franchise and our two main stars. If you're in the same boat, then I don't see why you wouldn't enjoy this movie. But obviously, like I said, if you're not prepared for a 2-hour and 15-minute love fest masquerading as a horror movie, then yeah, I would say you could probably skip this one. But for whatever it's worth, not going to be in my top 10. It's not in my top 10 right now by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still a movie that I enjoyed. So I'll leave it at that. Not vital viewing for cinema, but if you do get a chance to see it in either IMAX or Dolby, it might be worth seeing if you're a fan of the franchise. Otherwise, I would say wait for streaming. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. So I'll just go ahead and pass the mic back over to Mike. Haha, no pun intended.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our discussion on Conjuring, and perhaps the last time we ever talk about it on Fresh Cuts, unless they decide to stick with the money, because they're making money still.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough side stories in this universe that I think they could still make a lot of money. Like, even though like La Llorona is not like the highest rated, even remotely the highest rated of the Conjuring universe, it still made a lot of money. So, and obviously, The Nun has already gotten 2 movies. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a third. There was always talk of the Crooked Man movie, which I know kind of got shelved there for a little while, but who knows? We might still see that in the future. So I think the Conjuring universe will do fine. I just don't really want to see any more Conjuring movies. Let's stick to, the Annabelles and the Nuns and whatever else you want to go with. But yeah, I'm good on the Conjuring. As much as I love the franchise, I think I've gotten what I needed from it, so I'm good.
Alrighty then. Well, with that, we're gonna get out of here, but I am not sure if anyone has anything new, so I'll start with Venom. Do you have any other shows new for people to listen to?
Yes, it's not quite out yet. It is edited. I'm just doing like some artwork and some show text and a few other minor things. But the August episode of No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. That's episode number 41. Will be out before the end of this week. Like I said, I just finished editing it yesterday, and it should be in the hands of our network head sometime this week. And so look out for that, episode 41. What the hell movie did we do? I forgot already.
Night of the Demon.
Thank you. Night of the Demon. Don's pick. There you go. So Don can get into a little bit more detail on that one. But yeah, that's all I have is the latest Creature Comforts. Like I said, work is keeping me very busy. I worked 62 hours last week. So yeah, podcasting is going to have to take a back seat for a little while. But yeah, I mean, I'll always be here for Fresh Cuts and the main show and Creature Comforts. Hopefully, time permitting, we can get the Crystal Lake gift shop back on track. But for now, it's kind of on a mild hiatus until, I can get my life into some kind of routine again. But yeah, that's it for me. Just a new Creature Comforts.
All right, you got anything, Don?
As Venom mentioned, the latest Creature Comforts should be available sooner rather than later. I went with Night of the Demon, which is probably not the one that you're thinking of. It's not the Linnea Quigley film, which is Night of the Demons, nor is it the classic British horror movie Curse of the Demon, which was released in America as Night of the Demon. It's an entirely different film altogether. We took a look at a horny rapist Bigfoot movie, and then all of the subsequent details will be revealed on that current episode, which should be out, like I said, sooner rather than later. And other than that, just waiting on all my stuff that I recorded earlier in the year to get released.
All right, cool. As far as me, nothing new outside of our umbrella of shows. I will say the latest episode of the main show was posted on the network last week. It was on YouTube a handful of days earlier, but now it's up in all places, which was episode 69, which was Zombie 3 and Lair the White Worm, courtesy of Derek and his picks. And then if all goes well, we'll be recording episode 70 this coming up weekend. So we'll see about getting that done. And then as far as my understanding, the next episode of Fresh Cuts is probably going to be The Long Walk, correct?
Yeah, more than
is that considered a horror movie? Like, I know it's a Stephen King novel, right?
It's more of a thriller. I've never actually read it, but from what I understand, it's more of a thriller that's got like horror elements to it. So, I mean, I think it's a good pick. We haven't done a Stephen King adaptation in a while, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I only know
more
the basics of the story, so I was just.
Have we even done one? I'm trying to think. I don't even think we have done one.
Well, we did Dr. Sleep.
Was that technically before Fresh Cuts, though, or was that?
Oh no, that's very solidly after Fresh Cuts. Yeah. I mean,
that was probably before my time then.
Dr. Sleep was what, 2018, 2019, maybe. I don't remember. Yeah. Maybe even 2017. The same year as it chapter 1. I don't remember, but yeah, we definitely did Dr. Sleep because I raved about it.
The Pet Cemetery remake might be a technicality because
God.
I mean, not that we were thrilled with it, but I guess technically it's based on
exactly. I'm actually more excited about other stuff opening in theaters this weekend. I mean, we got the Demon Slayer movie opening, which I am a huge Demon Slayer fan, and this is supposed to be basically the final chapter. We've gotten five seasons of the TV show, and we've already had 2 movies, so this will now be the third, potentially the final. So I'm very excited about that. And then, oh my God, something that 10-year-old Mr. Venom can't believe we're actually getting, Spinal Tap 2. Oh my God, I'm so fucking excited. I absolutely adore the original Spinal Tap. And now we're getting part 2. What, like Jesus, like 40 plus years later, 45 years
Man, I
later.
can't believe we got a sequel to Spinal Tap before GTA 6.
Yes, valid point. Oh my God.
I love Spinal Tap, and when they first announced the sequel, I was a little worried, but I saw the trailer and it looks like they actually have something to say. Like it, you could say, oh, it might be like cash in, but like from the writing and stuff, I think it's actually going to be pretty funny because
Yeah, I mean, Rob Reiner doesn't do cash in movies. I mean, if he's doing this, it's because he had an idea, and I'm
yeah.
excited. I've been watching all the video. Like, I haven't watched the trailer purposely, but I have watched all of like the little interviews and shit that like they've done. Like they've done the what have they done? They did like one for Hot Ones, you know, the spicy wing thing. They did an interview where they talk about like some of their favorite things, like the 10 items that they can't live without. One of them is, of course, a cucumber wrapped in aluminum foil. So that's amazing. But yeah, I've been watching all of those, and I'm sorry, those 3 guys are still fucking hysterical. The 3 main guys of Spinal Tap are just, they're still funny. They still have that same attitude, but obviously they're older now. So they've got like the old man aspect as well. That's adding more comedy to it. So I'm very excited. This is going to be a big movie weekend for me between Demon Slayer, The Long Walk, and Spinal Tap 2. I am very excited. So yeah, should be fun.
Same. All right, cool. Well, with that, we're gonna get out of here. So, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Fresh Cuts, and we will be back in a week. Let's say bye, listeners.
Later.
Goodbye, Ed and Lorraine. If we never see you again, I just know that this podcaster is very happy with the content that we got. And if we never see, you know, Patrick and Vera back in this franchise, it doesn't matter. I will forever love them in this role. And, you know, God bless them both. I fucking loved it.
All right, peace.